You had the shame, you had the torture, you had the not coming into the afterlife happily baked into a little awful pie. I wouldn't want to eat that. Hi and welcome to my channel Morbid History. I'm Pilvi and a few times a week I upload morbid history videos, which basically means I cover the gruesome, morbid, creepy and horrible sides of history. In today's disturbing execution methods from history. Let's jump straight on into it. So let's start with number 1 on this list, and that is rat torture. Even though the name suggests that it was plain torture, most people were subjected to this with the sole purpose to be cancelled. There's no way you would actually survive something like this, I'd imagine. Either way. You started off with a condemned person. A person who had done something very bad, hopefully. They would lie down, face up, and onto their stomach a little apparatus, sometimes a ceramic bowl, sometimes a cage of sorts. Into this little cage they would then put some ravenous rats. They had not eaten for quite a while and were getting a bit desperate. That's what we wanted, desperate rats. Then, to make matters worse, because now of course the rats were quite stuck on top of the stomach, they put some burning or super hot coal, or sometimes even a fire, on top of the cage or bowl or whatever kept the rats in place. This would of course cause even more panic with these rats trying to find a way out. There wasn't really much choice. They started gnawing, biting, eating their way into the stomach of said prisoner until they found a way out. They could come out of any side of the body. That would be a very terrible and painful way to be thrown into cancellation. Moving on. And now we move on to number 2 on this list. And it was actually a recommendation from my last, the part 1 video, and it's the boats, or escapism. Let's just say the boats. I think this might actually be the worst way to go imaginable, or one of the worst. It involved finding a location with still water so that the person wouldn't just float away. You needed 2 boats, and you placed the criminal into one of the boats, and then you placed the other boat on top, but you let the person's head and limbs stick out from this weird boat concoction. Then you filled their stomach, forced them to ingest large amounts of honey and milk, and if they didn't want to, you pricked their eyes, and for some reason that made them open their mouths and what else, and they would like bloat from all of this. They would come back every day and just fill them up with milk and honey, and they would smear them with this milk and honey concoction. This kind of execution could take a very long time. I'm talking weeks. The meaning of it would be to get either a gangrene infection or just be eaten alive by insects who would be very much drawn to this milk and honey concoction. that he was basically 90% made of at this point. Someone would visit this person on a daily basis until they were well and truly dearly departed. What a way to go! Moving on. Then we swiftly move on to walled in alive, or involvement, bricked in. Many names for the same thing. Being walled in has a very long history. We have records, of course, even from Egypt, where slaves would be entombed with their masters, still alive, just to be left there to die and move on with their masters into the afterlife. Basically, you were taken alive into a small enclosed space, sometimes a room, and you were walled in. They bricked you up. You couldn't get out. Here in Scandinavia, I've noticed that this was used a lot as a way for fathers to punish unruly daughters, which sounds a bit extreme, since they actually did go to the Valley of Death through this. If they were trying to teach their daughters something, it wasn't like the absolute best way, but who am I to judge rich aristocrats in the 1500s? Here in Scandinavia, we actually have a very true story about a beautiful aristocratic girl in the 1550s that was walled in by her father at Dragholms slot in Denmark. Her name was Celestine, and her father got so upset when he found out that she was having a secret romance with a stable boy. For many, many hundred years, people did not know where she went. It was a mystery. She just disappeared from historical records. Until 1910, when they were doing renovations on the castle, and they found her skeleton in a small space behind a wall, still wearing her white nightgown. It's really true that women were nothing but property back then, isn't it? Moving on to number 4 on the list. Death of 1,000 cuts, or Ling Chi. This was an execution method that was used in China between 900 AD until it was outlawed in the early 1900s. So like for 900 years they did this. This method involved tying the condemned person to a wooden frame, and then the executioner would slowly cut off pieces of flesh one by one by one. And so it would just continue until life subscription was cancelled. There's actually a video from one of the last times this happened. I'm not gonna show it. Google it if that's your thing. But yeah, this could take all from minutes to hours depending on the brutality of the executioner, the type of crime, if the family had bribed the executioner for the victim to have a quick death. The reasoning behind this kind of torture was that they wouldn't be coming into the afterlife whole, which was pretty important to people back then. So this was like all of the not so great things baked together. You had the shame, you had the torture, you had the not coming into the afterlife happily baked into a little awful pie. Yeah, I wouldn't want to eat that.
Before we go to the last one, it's super duper gross. please subscribe. I'm trying to get to 2,000 subs before the end of this year. Help me, please. It would be so much fun. Please. Thank you.
And then we go to number 5, the Judas cradle, or the Judas chair. This was a contraption that was first invented by the Spanish Inquisition in the 16th century. It was invented at first just as a torture method for the Inquisitions, like I said, when they were trying to interrogate witches and heretics. But as many torture devices did, it soon developed into an execution method. Because seriously, people don't survive stuff like this. So what was this little chair? Using the word chair super lightly here. It was basically a wooden stool that had either a wooden or metal triangle on top of it. The person being subjected to this torture would be hoisted up above the triangle in some kind of hanging mechanism that made it so that the people torturing could whisk them up and down per their own leisure. If the Judas chair victim was a man, they would put it into his anus. If it was a female, it went to the vagina. And gravity would do its job. Of course, if gravity didn't do its job, the torturers could just hoist them up and down at different speed and force. The chair was supposedly never ever cleaned, so the person on top of it would die within a few days, at least, from either an infection or blood loss, as the triangle moved further into their
orifice?
Into the hole of the torturer's choosing. But our words. But of course, for further speed or force, they could lubricate it. That would help, and even sometimes place some weights on the person's limbs. Can't say they weren't imaginative. Yeah. So yeah, that was today's video. What part did you find most disturbing? Let me know down below. I really love to hear from you guys. I'll see you in the next video, and that will be another one of the iceberg videos. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. It really helps super duper much, you know, with all the algorithm and stuff like that. Either way, I'll see you in the next one. Until then, mwah! Bye bye! Giant thanks to all my lovely patrons, and check down below for ways to support my channel. Thanks!